Welcome today. This is Scarlet and Rage podcast. I am Michael, and of course, Rage is here with me, and I think that he has some rageful thoughts that he's going to unleash as we move forward in this episode. But thank you guys for all of your support, the views, the likes, the subscribes, and if you have not yet, if you've been watching us and checking us out, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and like this video. And if you do subscribe, hit the bell, the alert bell, so that you'll know every time we release a video. And so we would appreciate that very much. And thank you so much, those of you that already have. This is a recruiting show. It is a show about good, a show about bad. There is certainly some of both in this recruiting class. I would not definitely go as far as to say that this is a class that I am. There are positives to this class, so I'm just going to leave it at that right now, and then I'll certainly give some of my thoughts about some of the things in this class that I'm not necessarily, thrilled with. But you tell me, what are you thinking about it right now? I know you feel probably a little less optimistic than me, even though I certainly have my my concerns with this class. But you go ahead and give us some of your thoughts.
Well, I mean, I am rage for a reason, Michael. Letting everyone know, me and Michael actually did not plan this podcast. This is all just on the fly. I called Michael this morning. I'm like, we need to have a podcast on some of the
Yeah.
stuff going down today. Um, Honestly, yeah, is the class ranked in the top 5? Yeah. I mean, is it a good class? Sure. Is it a class that's going to beat like Alabama or Georgia? No, it's not. Um, we had a lot of guys we were in on the last couple weeks, like Coy Parrish from Minnesota,
Mhm.
Amaris Williams, Jordan Seaton, people like that. And none of them went to Ohio State, Michael. I mean,
Yeah.
like today, so what just happened about like 30 minutes ago as we're recording this? Jeremiah Smith finally signed. Actually, no, he was already signed. He finally faxed in his letter of intent, Michael. Were you aware of this?
Not until you text messaged me that
Okay.
just a bit ago. No, so it is actually in now.
Okay. So I don't even know where to start with this, people. I'm honestly really pissed off and I'm depressed about this. I'm probably one of the few fans that's like visibly upset, internally upset,
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, we went into this day, Amaris Williams went to Auburn. So, and then Jeremiah McClellan, the wide receiver from Missouri, St. Louis area, flipped to
Mhm.
Oregon in
Mhm.
the morning.
Yeah.
So at the end of this day, Amaris Williams went to Auburn.
Mhm.
So Ohio State ended up having a guy taken away, and Jeremiah McClellan
Right.
barely holding on for two people, and not adding anyone. That is an extremely, extremely disappointing finish compared to what some of these SEC teams are doing, like Auburn, like Alabama, like Georgia. Georgia flipped KJ Bolden today. Where's Ohio State's 5-star flip? Like, hello? Like, why aren't we aggressively recruiting with any success at the end of these recruiting cycles? Because that's where the elite classes are separated from the good classes. This
Yeah.
is a good class, but don't make no mistake. It is not an elite class. I don't care if they have 5 composite 5-stars because they only had 6 composite top 100 players. Like Michael, I'm really
Right.
pissed off, bro. I am pissed off. This was not the class that Ohio State
Mhm.
needed to beat Georgia or Alabama.
Yeah. So I think last year, the class lacked those top end guys. You just didn't have many 5-stars. Would you have like one in the class last year that was a number 5 class in the nation? Was it one or two?
Just one. They had Brandon Ennis
That's
from
right.
American
One
Heritage.
5-star. So
Mhm.
last year was lacking kind of that top end. This year's was lacking, just the depth that was needed. I mean, you had the 5 composite 5-stars, but then it's not like you had another 4 or 5 4-stars that were in the top 100. And I mean, when you've only got 6 in the top 100 in my opinion, that's not quite an elite class. It is a
No.
very good class. And you did get the number one player in the nation. I mean, it's kind of to the point, I think, with some Ohio State fans, and I certainly am in this camp a little bit, that it's hard to get excited about the all-world receivers anymore, because we've seen that without certain other pieces in place, those all-world receivers don't win certain games. You can't depend on great wide receivers to win games that have to be won in the trenches. And so it's fantastic to get those wide receivers, but we're looking for improvement up front, because that's what Ryan Day's team has to have. That's what Ryan Day has to inject into this program to go from a team that loses most of their big games and does not beat the best SEC teams. Ryan Day's never beat an SEC team, and so he's got another opportunity coming up soon. We'll see if he can take on Missouri, but that's a different subject. But overall, I think there's just lacking in some areas that we know that Ohio State needs in order to move the needle. And I don't think that this class moved the needle. I think that this class just kind of held par to, kind of exactly where we've been the last few years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think they finished let's look at the point rating system here. So, I don't believe Ohio State made it. Like Ohio State was at hovering around 300. They've lost points in the last couple of weeks. We're at 288.81 as overall points in a recruiting class, and like a national championship class, you got to be above 300 in the 247 composite, man. Like a couple teams have jumped Ohio State. Like, look at these teams that are just doing work in the final couple days leading up to early National Signing Day. But let's be real, this is the signing day. Most of the players are signing today.
So
Alabama,
read us the top
Miami.
five.
Well, number 1 is Georgia, 2 Alabama, 3 Miami, 4 Ohio State, 5 Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And Texas is doing work in the transfer portal. What the hell has Ohio State done in the transfer portal?
Well,
Not jack shit.
certainly haven't done anything there.
It's no, they haven't done anything. They haven't done anything. No. I mean, they were flirting with some guys at linebacker, the linebacker from Cal, and I'm not even looking at him like he's not the answer. We're looking at Tackett Curtis from USC, supposedly. He's definitely not the answer. Don't be fooled. That guy is not a pure linebacker. It would
You don't
not
think
help
he's
Ohio
good?
State. I do not think he's good. No.
Okay.
Go look at his best. Go look at the better teams USC played. He's garbage.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a guy who has some big hits every now, but he's undersized and he probably should be playing safety, but he's not fast enough to play safety against the best team, and he's not big enough to play linebacker.
Well, I mean, he was just a freshman last year, so maybe he will get there. I mean, maybe there's potential for him. I mean, I think it would be.
I don't know, man. It would take a long time, because have you watched any of his high school film?
No.
I watched his high school film, and I remember looking at him. I'm like, why is everybody so amazed by this guy? Because he was basically playing shallow for a safety, shallow for a safety, but deeper, as a linebacker. I don't even know what the position was, but he would just come downhill every play and have a clear gap at the ball carrier and just, blast them, which was in lower level Louisiana football. That's not how you play linebacker in the Big Ten or SEC,
right,
or even really safety for that matter, because you're going to be deeper as a safety. You're not going to be able to just tee off and run support against teams that are only running the ball no, it doesn't work like that. I was like, this guy's not the answer. And I didn't really cry after he went to USC. I was like, whatever. And now he wasn't good enough for USC. He didn't really have a very good season for them. I understand he played under Alex Grinch, but I mean, USC just doesn't have a lot of talent on the defensive side of the ball. And he's one of them.
Mm. Yeah, well, I mean, I would take him if he wanted to come here, especially if he was willing to redshirt and sit for a year and learn and develop. I don't know that he's wanting to do that. I don't know that he would want to go from starting at USC to redshirting at Ohio State. But if he did, he would be, have time to develop, and it would be another person in there competing. Would he ever amount to anything? I don't know. But if he wanted to come here, I certainly would at least take him. Let him give it a shot, let him mix it up and see how it does, because we're certainly not getting anything else. I mean, it doesn't seem like we've got any other hot targets.
No, I mean, again, recruiting across the board, especially on the defensive side of the ball, is atrocious. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, there is really no other words to describe. It's terrible. I know, like, you can give him a shot, but like, what is he really? Is he able to even put on the weight? Like, I understand he's listed at 225. You look at him on the field, he looks like he's maybe 210. And
Yeah.
that's not big enough to play linebacker, especially in the Big Ten. That's not
Right.
big enough, man. And you know, yeah, is he fast for a linebacker? Sure, but so is Ryan Shazier, and he was undersized and
Mhm.
got run over a lot. Another overrated linebacker from Ohio State, by the way. I mean, Steel Chambers is a little undersized. He hasn't really, he's been okay, but we can't have okay. We need to have
Mhm.
great. Where is
Mhm.
an AJ Hawk or somebody, man? Like, get somebody who's like 6'2", 6'3", can run and is big. Like Kingston Viliamu-Asa, that's a loss right there. That is somebody we really needed. We didn't get him. Notre Dame beat us for him.
Yeah, there haven't been a lot of good linebackers in the Ryan Day era.
No,
It's
only
been
from
a
Ohio. They only can get
yeah.
them from Ohio.
Yeah, it's been a weak point for sure. And so to the positives on this class, obviously there's some talent in there. We did really good at cornerback. Very very pleased with the cornerback part of this class. I think that we got some good players on offense. Certainly got some good receivers. Peoples, the running back. I think he's going to be an intriguing player to watch to see how he develops.
Needed two running backs, though. We needed two. We only got one.
Yeah, well, that's true. We did need to. And if Trey leaves, then that running back room is going to be really, really thin. Like if Trey leaves, it's very conceivable the way that these teams have had injuries the last few years that you could end up without a serviceable running back. I mean, because we got down to third and fourth string running backs in 2022. And so, and then Trey was hurt this year. So, I mean, if Trey doesn't come back and Hayden got hurt, then you've got a freshman and nobody else. Unless you're counting Dixon, and there's no way he's going to be ready to play running back next year. I mean, no way. I mean, so he's a guy that would be maybe a contributor by his third year. I mean, he's not a guy that's likely going to play early, so you can't count on him whatsoever. So, even at running back, it didn't quite get the job done. And then, of course, linebacker was okay. You've got the one kid out of Texas, Pierce, who's I guess a nice prospect. He's not a guy that he's a guy that reminds me a lot of Tommy Eichenberg. I hope he's a
Oh
little more.
God, man.
I'm
Oh
hoping he's a little
God.
more explosive athlete than Tommy. I don't know. I haven't seen him enough to say at this point.
I mean, I haven't watched a lot of his film, man. I can just tell you based off his measurables with stuff. Like, I'm just not that excited for him. He's not a freak athlete. Ohio State needs freak athletes at linebacker, like what Alabama and Georgia have. Like, I looked at any of those guys; they're not them. Kingston
Yeah.
Viliamu-Asu was one of them, but none of these guys are it, man. It's just
Well, I mean, a guy can be a great linebacker and not necessarily be a freak athlete, but he's got to have the instincts. He's got to take the right angles. He's got to do everything else right. I mean, like a Chris Spielman, who was a great linebacker, but he wasn't fast. He ran a 4.9 in the combine. So, I mean, you can have those less athletic linebackers that can be very effective, but I don't view Tommy Eichenberg as really fitting into that category. I view him as a less athletic linebacker that was just kind of good, because he was good against most teams, but he wasn't good against the best teams, and that was consistent across the board. The best teams that they played, Tommy, would become a non-factor, and so that I'm not hitting on him. I mean, he is a tough kid, gave a lot of effort, but that's the truth. Is we are hoping for an upgrade in that linebacker area in years to come, and it doesn't seem like we got it out of this class. And then of course defensive line is once again very thin. I mean, we averted disaster by Houston staying, which I didn't think Houston was going to stay. I thought he was gone.
I thought he was gone too, Michael. That's why I was calling. I was like, this class is about to end in a total like nuclear disaster meltdown,
Mhm.
Chernobyl type thing. That's why I was like, that's why we decided to do this podcast tonight. It didn't, it had a very disappointing finish still, but
Mhm.
at least it was nuclear reactor averted disaster with Houston, holding on to him at the
Yeah.
last moment and Jeremiah Smith. And it's like this is the optics I'm talking about. Like we should not be the program that is picked on with like our 5-star and high 4-star players. We should be the ones out going out there hunting. But you didn't see us involved with anybody getting to try and flip other players from other teams. Like we were basically just holding on. It's like the last couple of months we've just been decimated with some of our best players, Justin Scott,
Mhm.
Jeremiah McClellan,
Mhm.
Jordan Lyle, all
Mhm.
gone. If you put
Yeah.
those guys just back in this class, I'm calling it a great class.
Yeah.
But they're not here anymore. So you
Right.
can't call it a great class
Right.
anymore. Ryan, what the hell
Right.
are you doing? Like, why are you not going out there aggressively getting guys to replace these people? Urban Meyer did. Urban
All right.
Meyer had a lot of faults, but it wasn't with this, not with the end of recruiting.
No, he was a closer. That's for sure. And so you definitely see that distinct difference between the Urban days and the Day days. Is Urban's always picked up steam and finished strong, and Day is the exact opposite. He starts strong and always loses steam going into the finish line, and you're just kind of hoping that too many of them don't fall off because we've kind of become accustomed to now. This is 3 years in a row, so,
Oh
this is a
yeah.
pattern. This is 3 years in a row of losing top-rated guys down the stretch, whatever various reasons, whatever the case may be. There was two defense, let's start with the offensive line though, because that was a weak spot in this class.
Terrible offensive
And
line
it's
class.
something that I'm
Terrible.
concerned about because the offensive line room isn't overly strong as it is. So we needed some real strength in this class. And can you read off the rankings of the offensive line recruits in this class, what they're ranked? Like our highest one is not in the top 150, and then it just goes down from there. Will you read those off?
Oh, by the way, we're now 6th in the composite. We're no longer a top 5 class, Michael. We're at number 6.
Really?
Yeah, I just literally. Oh, my bad. This is the overall rank, including transfers. We're at number 4. My bad. So
Okay.
when it comes to the offensive line, Michael, that's a good question you asked. Ian Moore is our highest rated ranked offensive lineman in the composite. He is 137. So
Okay.
now we have to go all the way down the list. Now we get to Gabe Van Sickle from Coopersville, Michigan.
Okay.
Coopersville, Michigan sounds like a really good place to pick up some great football players, right? Ranked 368 in the country. Woo!
Okay.
Now we go down to Lakewood St. Edwards High School.
Yep. Very familiar with
Deontay,
that area.
yeah, Deontay Armstrong. He's ranked 427. How he's still a 4-star on here, I have no fucking clue.
What is he? 89.999. What is he? What is this?
89 to 0.8925. That's right. And
Okay.
then next up is his brother, Devontae Armstrong, at 89 straight, and he is a 3-star. So we got 3 4-stars and a 3-star. Two very low 4-stars, a 3-star, and a semi-high 4-star. He wasn't in the top 100, but he was ranked like 137 or whatever. That's the offensive line class we settled for. That is fucking trash. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Justin Fry sucks. And
I mean,
Ryan Day sucks at recruiting these players.
look, nothing against the Armstrong twins. They may end up being great. I don't know. We'll see. But those are the kind of kids that you add on when you have like three top 150 kids or
Yes.
three top
Yeah.
200 linemen. Then you add those guys on to add some depth. But we had those guys as almost like centerpieces. It's like as soon as Fry landed those two, they're both practically 3-stars out of Cleveland. It's like he took a big load off and was like, whoo, yeah, I got the heavy lifting done now. I got two guys in the class and plus Ian Moore. And it's like he never even was close on anybody else. He signs this kid out of Michigan who, again, who knows what he's going to be. I guess he's a low 4-star as well. But yeah, it's definitely a little light on the offensive line, and that's problematic moving forward.
Coopersville, Michigan, right outside of Grand Rapids, is essentially out in the middle of nowhere. Like,
Mm.
oh yeah, that's exactly an area you want to be pulling offensive line from. Yeah, man, line recruiting on both sides of the ball was a disaster. And I mean,
Yeah,
offensive line, we really weren't in on anyone like of high caliber. Like, I know we were kind of in on Brandon Baker for a little while, but then it's like, we Texas got him, and then Ohio State really wasn't involved at all towards the end. And then like Jordan Seaton, we tried to make a last second push towards him, but he went to Colorado, and we're like probably the only podcast that said, listen, Jordan Seaton is not going to Ohio State
right.
because Justin Fry doesn't have the sales personality to get somebody like
No,
that. He's not a good recruiter, and to be a good recruiter, you have to be a good salesman. Well, Justin Fry sucks as a recruiter. He sucks as a salesman. I don't even know the guy personally, but I know that just based on his results or lack of results.
look,
And Larry,
look,
yeah,
Jay, you don't have to be, and this is dead honest. You don't have to be very good to put this on your chest, walk into high schools as an offensive line coach representing this, and pull the class that he pulled. You don't have to be very good to do that. Like a lot of
no.
people could do that. A lot of coaches could do that. Practically any coach that's coached at a professional collegiate level could put on the Ohio State gear and go pull the offensive line class that he got.
Well, they were all from the Midwest too: Michigan, Ohio, Indiana. That was our entire offensive
Yeah,
line class.
which
He
would be
cannot go
fine.
outside of that region.
Which would be fine if they were rated higher. I mean, but they're not. They were
No.
local guys that were not highly rated. So how hard is that to get a local Midwest kid that's not highly rated? I mean,
And
it's pretty incredible.
yeah, well, and the state of Ohio is not innocent in all of this, and I've beat this drum for a while. The state of Ohio is not that good of a football state anymore. It's not in the top 5 of producing states, like, recruit-wise in the country. Like, Alabama and LSU have or not LSU, Alabama and Louisiana are probably
Mm,
higher up. Definitely Alabama, but
mhm,
Louisiana is probably, like, about to pass Ohio up too. So you have like the big 3 in California, Texas, and Florida. But now you have to include the big 4, and it's Georgia. So the 4 of them produce great talent. We know all the left wing politics in California are taking away talent from there. And of course, that is the only state of the list that is joining the Big Ten. Yippee! Yay! We have to
mhm.
add that state as just losing
Right,
population. And
right.
now, like Alabama and I don't know, Louisiana have figured it out. They're both ahead of Ohio. So now it's like we're like stuck with like these lower rated players in the state because we can't go out of state. Like you have to be an extremely good salesman to recruit at Ohio State, probably more so than the teams around there because you
Mhm,
do have to go out of the state. Like Ohio is behind the times. Like we don't have 7-on-7 football. I don't think the kids are even allowed to go and camp like an AAU camp outside of the state. Like the population in Ohio is not they're not producing like the twitchy freak athletes like and then the offenses in the state I mean look at the state championship games from a couple of weeks ago, Michael. None of
mhm.
those teams can throw a fucking forward pass. It's all
Yeah.
power run.
Yeah. I do think that they're in on a positive light, thankfully. I think there is some significantly better talent the next 2 or 3 years, definitely the next 2 years.
Yes.
There's even some nice offensive line prospects in Ohio the next couple of years. One of them, what looks like will be a 5-star offensive lineman in the state of Ohio. So
Carter
that's
Lowe.
what's that?
Carter Lowe, next class.
Uh, I think so in the 2025 class. He's
Yeah, he's
current.
the only highly ranked one. I don't know
He's
if he's going to be a 5-star, but he'll be top 100.
Well, I'm basing that on he's currently 93 because they haven't given out 5-star ratings yet for that class,
Uh-huh.
but he's ranked like the 34. He's ranked like the 31st best player in the class, something like that. So if he keeps that ranking, he will be a 5-star, but I don't know if he'll keep that ranking moving forward.
Yeah, man. Ohio is it's behind the times. It's not producing the talent. Um I mean, like anybody who follows recruiting like can tell you that. I follow it very, very close. It's always been a passion of mine. Um, I just like to see. I mean, I can always tell you who the best teams are before they even play because like they have the best recruits. That's why they win. The star ratings do matter. Don't
Mhm.
let anybody tell you otherwise because if they didn't matter, Georgia and Alabama wouldn't be winning all of the national
Yeah.
championships.
Yeah, I mean, when those stars are coached really well, it produces really good teams. There are some of those talented teams down there, like Florida and Texas A&M, that have got a lot of talent, but they're just not any good. I guess the coaching has just gone awry. So, Ryan Day is not that. He doesn't take really good talent and just do pure crap with it, but he certainly has not gotten to the point where he takes talent and gets the most out of it the way that Nick Saban does. Nick Saban may still be the best at that. Kirby Smart seems to be pretty
Mhm.
good in some areas as well, but Saban is probably still the best about taking high-end talent and getting the most out of it. Ryan Day certainly is significantly behind Saban in that regard, and he's now continuing to recruit behind Saban. He gets passed by Saban every year. So I don't know how you catch up with a guy that coaches better than you and recruits better than you. I guess we just have to hope for Nick Saban to retire. I mean, because we've got a guy right in our conference that doesn't recruit as well as us. Michigan with like what, the 14th or 16th class in the country this year.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, man. Michigan,
uh,
you guys really did not have a good class at all. I mean, I'm bitching over here about Ohio State, but man,
yeah.
your guys' class for your standards and the success you've had, terrible. You're ranked
It,
15th. That's terrible.
what is the rank? What
They're
rank is it?
15th, and they have a
Yeah.
90.22 average. Penn State's above them at 14th with a 90.63 average. Neither team has a composite 5-star. Nebraska is the only other Big Ten team with a composite 5-star, and that was the Dylan Raiola flip. And I was ecstatic about that because the Big
Yeah.
Ten needs talent in the worst way. And
Yeah.
Jordan Seaton, who I mentioned earlier, right now is flirting with Maryland. I hope he goes back to
Go to
Maryland.
Maryland.
Yeah, please go to Maryland, please. But like, man, the Big Ten recruiting just sucks, man. Terrible conference at recruiting. But I've said that over and over. And the Midwest region is not good at producing talent. And I tell you what you know what really rubs me the wrong way, Michael?
What?
What rubs me the wrong way with Ryan Day's program, and I don't know if it's really him at this point in this regard, but as we know, Jeremiah Smith signed, or not signed, but finally sent in his letter of intent a little over an hour ago. I know you guys are going to be listening to this on Thursday morning, but we're filming this obviously on Wednesday night. But he
Mhm.
finally sent that letter of intent in, and this is a kid who was committed to Ohio State for like a year, but he
Mhm.
was just going on visits every
Mhm.
weekend and
Yeah.
flirting with other teams.
Yeah.
I would never, ever put up with any of that bullshit. No player is worth that kind of headache, but even with that kind of headache, pales in comparison about what happened tonight with him taking so long to get his letter of intent in to Ohio State because they were working out his NIL money.
Mm.
This motherfucker better be worth every fucking penny because if
Yeah.
he's not, he is a worthless piece of shit. I
Hey,
don't give a fuck.
you know what? As for me, Jay, like I'll take the kind of the thought process that I'm glad they ponied up the money and got him, but if you made that a priority, which Ryan Day does make receiver a priority, why didn't you make it a priority to pony up the money for Justin Scott? Why did you allow him to be plucked out of the Midwest and go down to South Florida to Miami? It just seems like the priorities are out of whack. I mean, if I could trade Jeremiah Smith for Justin Scott and Lightfoot, I'd take those two defensive linemen over him. That's where I'm at with the program because the program needs strength up front, both in the defensive line and the offensive line. And, thank God that Houston stayed. Because
Barely.
barely, but read off our defensive line class for us.
We have Eric Mensa and Edric Houston. That's it. We have 2 guys. This is a disaster. It was still a disaster because you needed like 4 guys. Yeah, you're right. We swung and missed on all those defensive line guys. And before I get into that, the point of the matter is with Jeremiah Smith is if Ohio football produced better players, we wouldn't be held hostage by a player like Jeremiah Smith. We would just go get somebody from Ohio who was also maybe not as talented, but damn talented, but Ohio's not producing them. But yeah, you're right. We missed a lot at defensive line. We obviously got Justin Scott. He flipped. Dylan Stewart. He went to South Carolina over us, man. Marquise Lightfoot went to Miami. That shouldn't fucking happen.
No. I mean, between Scott being from Chicago, obviously having a like for Ohio State, Lightfoot being from Chicago, he really liked Ohio State. Both of them really liked you. Obviously, Scott liked you. He was committed to you for quite some time. And then, Stewart, who is not a Southern kid. He's not a Midwest kid. He's an East Coast kid. And he is, you're getting a one-on-one battle against South Carolina. You've got to win 3 out of those 4 guys. You can't be losing all of them but one. That's not acceptable. And the only one you got, was one that was probably the hardest to get, that you went out of, to get out of the SEC country. The 2 that were right up here in the Midwest, you somehow let slide through your hands to Miami. And so that's what aggravates me is some people on Ohio State radio have been trying to give the defensive line class a pass by saying, well, it's really hard when you have to get all of those defensive linemen out of the South. Well, yeah, it is, but you didn't. You had a 5-star and like a 97. Lightfoot was like a 96 or 97, almost a 5-star tackle and end. And Lightfoot is more of that type of speed rusher that we need. You have both of those guys right here in the Midwest, and you swung and missed at both of them. So don't give me this crap about you got to go down to the South to get defensive linemen. Defensive linemen from the Midwest went down to the South because you couldn't pull them into the boat.
Bad recruiting, bad salesman, bad NIL. Yeah, I understand Jeremiah Smith stuck. And I believe Miami probably did give him more money, but I really do believe the only reason he continued on with Ohio State is because, number one, Aaron Noland, I believe, is a good quarterback. He had a very down year for him this year. But 2, Ohio State's been putting people into the NFL. Like up until last last NFL draft, we haven't been putting any offensive linemen in the NFL, and we really haven't been putting any defensive linemen into the NFL lately. I know people preach Chase Young, Nick Bosa, and Joey Bosa for Larry Johnson, but the problem with that is those guys would have been first rounders at any team they went to. So is Larry Johnson really making that much of a difference here?
And not only that, that's that's a long time ago now. Like regardless of
it is.
I mean that 2019 the Bosas are well into their NFL careers, and and Chase Young is this is his 4th or 5th season in the NFL. So we can't. It's a bad sign when we keep having to use Chase Young's name as our defensive line credentials.
Right. Man, oh man, Larry Johnson's got to go. He's got to go. I know Edric Houston stuck with Ohio State because he believed Larry Johnson was going to stay, and yeah, maybe keep him on until midway through the next year. But you have to find somebody. You have to announce that he's going to be gone and that you're going to find an elite defensive line coach. But this garbage of being decimated close to National Signing Day and stuff with these defensive linemen and not cashing in after going 0 for 3 on the big 3 defensive ends last year, not getting an impact defensive end this year, and now we're settling for Dominic Kirks, who we might try and circle back around from Ohio. He's barely a top 250 kid. And yeah, I don't really know much about the guy. He's committed to Washington, Michael.
Jay, do you know what I would do?
What would you do?
If I'm Ryan Day, I would go to him and say, Larry, we love you. We appreciate all you've done. It's impacting our line recruiting. We needed 4 or 5 linemen in this class, and we've got 2. And we just barely averted disaster for this class. Like,
No, it's still a disaster, just not a nuclear
it's just not
meltdown.
as bad. But
Yeah.
if Houston doesn't come, this is program shaking disaster of a defensive line class. You can't compete with one defensive lineman that's not even highly ranked. I mean, this is not even a competitive defensive line class, even though we got 1 out of 2 of them really good. But I would go to him, I would say, I need you to retire, but I am asking you to please stay around on an emeritus basis. Stay around the program so that we can tell these kids that you recruited that as long as they're here, you're going to be here. And your only job is just to be that grandfather figure to them, encourage them, impart your wisdom and knowledge in them. But we're going to hire a younger defensive line coach and then work out some kind of deal to pay him for another 2 or 3 years to just kind of hang around the program. Obviously, pay him a greatly reduced salary, but there's a way to work through these kind of things. But it's like Ryan Day gets paralyzed in fear and just stays stuck in these decisions that year after year are costing the program from moving forward. And I would even argue that we're very much on the brink of sliding back. I think we have slidden back. That's obvious because we're no longer the number 1 team in the Midwest, but I think we're in danger of sliding back even another step to, not even necessarily being a top 5 type of team year in and year out, because we weren't a top 5 team this year.
What if he says no, Michael? What if he says no, Ryan Day? I'm not going to do that.
Well, then you say that was my offering of goodwill. Then I'm going to have to dismiss you.
Okay,
Period.
just as long as Ryan Day has the balls to do it. He doesn't seem
Yeah.
like he does. I know he got rid of Kerry Coombs, like, kinda, but I don't know, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
Larry Johnson's got to go. And the more I look at this staff, and when I mean staff, everybody, everybody, not including Ryan Day, but the only 2 good recruiters on this entire staff are Tim Walton and Brian Hartline. And there is some positive there. I'm going to give a clap to them because Brian Hartline, even though he lost Jeremiah McClellan, he did end up still holding on to Jeremiah Smith and Mylan Graham from Indiana, who is a 5-star. It's nice to actually have a 5-star from the Midwest. And then Tim Walton on the other side got Aaron Scott and Bryce West. Now, they
Yep.
are both from Ohio.
Yeah.
These are both Ohio kids, so they're kind of shoo-ins, but he did get them, and they were highly ranked.
Yeah.
And
And I
Miles
mean,
Lockhart is a solid player from Basha out near Phoenix area in
yeah.
Arizona.
And I mean, Scott could have gone most places. I mean, there's not too many places that wouldn't have taken Scott.
Michigan fans, I know you guys wanted him really bad, and
Yeah.
he fired he fooled everyone. And well,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say he fooled everyone, but he did like kind of pull out that. I don't even remember it, but his ceremony like kind of set off a fire alarm.
Well, he grabbed the Michigan bag, and after he'd already set the Ohio State bag aside and the Oregon bag aside, he grabbed the Michigan
That's right,
bag
and reached. Yep.
and reached in and pulls out an Ohio State jersey and puts it on and says, "I'm going to Ohio State." So that's what he did, as far as Michigan. So yeah, I mean, very nice corner class. I all 3 of those guys I think were great gets. And so, again, nice receiver class. But yeah, I mean, just overall lacking in those areas that.
Lacking in the
And,
spots Ohio State needed the most. Offensive
yeah,
tackle is a disaster. Defensive
yeah.
end, disaster. Edric Houston is kind of a tweener. You can't call him a true defensive end. You can't really call him a defensive tackle either. So it's like linebackers, disappointing. Safety, disappointing. Like who did we get at safety, man? Nobody worth of note, Michael. We put
I,
all our eggs in the KJ Bolden basket. We didn't get him.
I feel like with Houston's frame, I really think he could be 310 pounds and be a nasty defensive lineman.
He doesn't have the explosiveness to be a defensive end, so that actually might have to be.
I meant defensive tackle. Of course, defensive line, but I think he could weigh 300 or 310 pounds pretty easily with his frame and be a defensive tackle. And I think he'd probably be really quick for a defensive tackle.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I hope so. I hope so. I mean, like, we need like a guy like Jalen Carter, man. I mean, I was talking to somebody about this today. I'm like, where is Whereas like the Jalen Carter for Ohio State's defense, I think Justin Scott would have been him, but we didn't get him. And it's like, you look at like the safety class. I mean, Garrett Stover from Sunbury, Ohio. Okay, that's a solid get. He's a 105 in the composite. But the next two guys you got, Leroy Roker from Bishop Verot and Fort Myers, Florida. He's barely even a 3-star. He's almost a damn 2-star. And then you have who's the guy from like the New Jersey area, Jalen McLean. Like,
Mhm.
who the fuck are these guys,
Who
man?
is
Like,
Jalen
these are
McLean?
not the
What is
people
he
that
ranked? What is McLean ranked?
McLean is ranked 269.
Okay. So
So
I mean just out of the
okay.
top, yeah, just out of the
Just
top
okay.
247. Yeah.
Okay's not gonna beat Alabama,
Yeah.
Georgia, let alone Michigan. It's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. No,
Because the
you
development is not there at Ohio State like it is Michigan. Michigan can with a class like this, Michigan will continue to beat Ohio State because Ohio State has had better recruiting classes than this and still lost to Michigan. And Michigan
and it's
is
not
recruiting
addressing this class is not addressing the areas that's getting them beat
no.
against Michigan.
No, it is
Hmm.
not. I mean, the offensive line, bad. Defensive line, no. Offensive line, very bad. Defensive line, probably very bad. Linebacker, very average at best. Safety, average at best. Like,
Mm,
that's those are the positions you need to stop the run.
mm.
So,
So very good wide receiver, very good corner, and that's really it that was very good in this class.
yeah, we got Aaron Noland as a
You could say, yeah,
quarterback.
you could say very good wide receiver, very good corner, very good quarterback.
Yeah,
So, and then
that's it.
outside of those three spots, the other spots are not very good. In fact, they're very average to even below average. So
And the thing
again,
is, yeah,
a very heavily weighted class for Ryan Day towards a very specific type of
once again,
player.
once
Yeah,
again, that's all. That's an MO of Ryan Day.
yeah.
The class rank is going to look good because he was top heavy at spots they always do well at, but the
Mhm.
positions they really needed, they failed. They
Yeah.
absolutely fucking failed, and I don't care what anybody says. I'm actually curious in the comments. What grade would you give this Ohio State class, Michael? No, I'm going to ask you. What would you give the Ohio State grade for this class?
I think I'm going to be more generous than you. I do. I'd be surprised if I'm not more generous than you, but I would give this class a B minus.
Okay, I was going to say a C, so
Okay.
it's close.
So I'm a half step up from you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and the B minus is not, some people would say, how could you say number 4 class is B minus? Well, if you just listen to the last 42 minutes, we told you how, because the areas that Ohio State has struggled in and the areas that have kept it from winning the big games and from getting to and winning a national championship, those areas weren't addressed. In fact, those areas maybe took another step backward. And so that's why it's a B minus class for me and a C class for Jay.
They again, not that I have any trust in them to do this, but they really need to hit the transfer portal hard at
Hmm.
offensive line and defensive line
Hmm.
and linebacker. Those
Yeah.
and safety. Hell, they probably need an entire makeover at all of those positions because they've just failed. They have absolutely fucking failed at those positions in recruiting. That I don't know what else to say, but they really need to get rid of like Justin Fry, Larry Johnson,
Yeah.
Tony Alford at running back. I know James Peoples was, he's a great get, but you needed a couple running backs. I mean,
Hmm.
they're so thin there now. And Tony Alford, all he ever does is get people flipped late to Miami, man. It's
Hmm.
like, yeah, Ohio, you're not innocent here because if you produce better running backs in the
Yeah.
state of Ohio, this wouldn't happen. But at the same time,
Well,
Tony Alford can't fucking hold on to these people
you
from
know,
Florida.
if we really had it going, we could have gotten Peoples and Marshall out of Cincinnati. But we don't have the type of clout to pull 2 running backs like that. Because frankly, we have a hard time getting 1,000-yard backs. So it's difficult to get 2 talented guys to come. But I mean, that was right there. That the guy was in state. I mean, if you can sell them to work together and be a dynamic duo, you had one in state, one out of state. But obviously, Marshall, he went on to Michigan.
Yeah, supposedly we just got in too late with Jordan Marshall, and I didn't really
Mhm.
watch a much of him this year. I know they lost to Springfield again. They
Mhm.
just can't seem to get past them for Moeller as a program. So I was looking forward to maybe seeing him in the state championship game, but I mean, I guess I was okay because I got to see Aaron Scott, who is going to Ohio
Yeah.
State. So,
He's a good
um,
back. He's a good back. I don't know how good he'll be in college, but he's definitely a good talented back.
yeah, I've seen some highlights, and he
Mhm.
looks like he honestly reminds me of Blake Corum. It
Mhm.
looks like identical. Maybe he's a little
Mhm.
taller, but they
Mhm.
honestly remind me of they basically remind me as like the same player. So,
Yeah.
here's another guy who's probably just going to run all over Ohio State, just like Blake Corum did. So it's par for the course, man. It won't
Mhm.
be surprising. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Takes
think,
you back to
yeah,
the Tim Bianca Batuka days. You remember that? Were you old enough for that?
I remember it faintly, and I do know I'm a very much aware of it, though. I
Yeah.
am very much aware of what Tim Batuka did. Hey,
Yeah.
man, Chris Perry ran over Ohio State in 2003. Remember that? I mean, not as bad
Yeah.
much as Tim Batuka, but he did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that Ohio State defense in 2003 was actually really good. So
Yeah, it was.
that was so if you honestly like the 1995 Ohio State defense kind of sucked. So it
Mhm.
kind of like elevates Chris Perry's performance in
Mhm.
2003, which is
Mhm.
probably more impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jordan Marshall's 5'10". So Blake Corum's 5'8". Jordan Marshall's 5'10".
So
So
maybe a
very
bigger Blake
similar.
Corum.
Yeah, that's what I said. He's a little bit
Mhm.
taller. So yeah, he
Mhm.
might be a little bit bigger. So
Yeah, I think he's
yeah.
gonna be a good back, so I wish we would've got him, but,
Yeah, me
uh,
too.
yeah, I think Peoples is certainly as good, if not better, but I would've really liked to have both of them in this class 'cause, boy, if we'd have known how thin the running back room was gonna be, Mike could have sold them on that idea, but, yeah, I mean, I guess we just hope Trey comes back.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, it's just I don't fucking know, man. I mean, he might come back, but I don't really care. I don't want to like put my hopes on hoping players return. I want
Right.
to actually just get the recruits, man. Get them it so it doesn't really matter. Don't put the pressure on those players. Like, hold their feet to
Well,
the fire and get
you
a
know,
decision out of
let's
them.
let's close it out with this and see
Yeah.
and see how this goes, Jay. Because one of the things that I'm beginning to hear amongst the Ohio State beat is that Ohio State's NIL program, I've heard this now across several different podcasts. So this is something that's getting out there. Possibly it's something that maybe Ohio State even wants out there. But what's being
Hmm.
said is that, this is what Ohio State is going to spend its NIL money for, is to get these existing players back that it's not nearly as interested in paying these high school kids NIL money. So it's willing to lose some of them like we've done the last 3 years. But we're going to use our NIL money to retain those players that are maybe a fourth rounder in the NFL, and we're going to give them the equivalent of a fourth round signing bonus to stay, come back, and try and play themselves into the first, second, or third round. And supposedly that's what we're being told to believe. So I am of the mindset that I'll believe it when I see it. When I see Trey come back, when I see Tua Maloau come back, which I don't think he is. When I see, multiple players that you think were probably going to go to the NFL because they were going to be a third, fourth rounder, when we start seeing those guys come back, that's when I'll believe that they're actually utilizing NIL in an effective manner as far as this roster retention goes.
Well, you're right. I'll believe it when I see it. It didn't work well. I mean, like if this is like just now going to into effect for this class, I mean, we'll see. But if they're trying to tell me they was going to effect for last class, I'm going to call them a liar because Luke Whippler was like a third or fourth round pick and he didn't come back.
He was a sixth round pick.
Wow, really? Oh
Left
fuck,
as a
you're right.
left as a redshirt sophomore and was a sixth round pick.
Yeah. So actions speak louder than words.
Yep.
So I
Yep.
mean, I hope that they weren't trying last year because if they were and still failed, um, that means none of these guys are gonna come back.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see if this is just a line, a company line that we're being given, or if it's something that will actually happen. But Jay, I don't have anything else for
I don't have anything,
today. I
man.
mean,
I'm
that kind
pissed
of
off.
that kind of wraps it up. We've covered it. I know you're down. I'm certainly a little bit down about some things too. Probably some others out there that are down, probably some others that are out there that are really happy. And so that's great. Wherever we're at on that spectrum, we do have a top 5 class. We do have a game against Missouri that I'm excited about seeing. And I hope we can go, beat an SEC team. And we'll have a couple of Big Ten SEC matchups coming your way when we do the Alabama-Michigan preview and the Ohio State-Missouri preview. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll be back with those here in the near future. Take it easy.
See you, everybody.